right, this is Scott Churchson from the Sports Den, and welcome to Spangler Sports World on Zingo TV, channel 249 and 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app on the app stores of iOS and Android. When you download, do make sure to rate and leave a comment. Both apps are free. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku and Roku sticks, and also all smart TVs 2016 and forward. Hope you guys are doing amazing out there. My name, like I said, is Scott Churchson. This is the Sports Den. Alongside me, as always, is Mr. Obi Spencer and Mr. Rob Stats. How are you gentlemen doing?
Oh, I'm great
The
today.
Queen's wave we got going on. Go ahead, I'm
Great
sorry.
today. Looking forward to our conversation for sure.
Oh, boy, we got a lot of stuff. Jared is actually doing some quality control. He will show up one of these days. We're staying in communication. He has not departed the show. But, yes, we got a ton of stuff we're going to be covering today. We're going to be covering Gonzaga, such as that was, previewing the Masters. We're going to be doing our weekly shut up and shout out and shut up. In my case, it is literally the same person. Stats, I know you have somebody both borderline in and out of sports. We will also be talking about imaginary rule changes for Major League Baseball to make them a little more interesting. Some of you may like, some of you may not. Some you'll agree with, some you won't. So anyway, I want to start this off. I absolutely do want to start this off. Gonzaga, disappointing end to a surprisingly good, but at the end of this day, disappointing season. So
I turned the game on last night, and it was they were down 15, just like, I think I've seen enough. And then they've lost by 15 or 16. But it's not that surprising because – is my audio all right?
Your audio's fine, yeah.
Okay. It's not that surprising because I feel like everyone just underestimated Baylor. Like Baylor, if you look at them, they didn't do anything out of the ordinary from what they had been doing the whole tournament and like most of the season. They it was just, I was like, this is the Baylor. Baylor showed up to play. Baylor brought their A game, and Gonzaga, I think, they were running on fumes. Like it's so hard to go undefeated. We've seen it in other sports. We've seen it in the NFL with the Patriots. We've seen, it's happened in college basketball before with UNLV back in like the early 90s, I believe it was, when they lost to Duke. It's just so hard. And I always say, like, even in like the NFL, when teams are on a roll and they're one or two losses heading into the playoffs, I'm always like, you want to lose a game like right before the playoffs, like just to reset the system. Or it's like, to reference another conversation we were having the other day about movies, like clear the mechanism, like just reset everything and be like, okay, we're human. Let's get focused again and let's remember what we do. But yeah, I think a lot of people wanted to see Gonzaga go undefeated. I would have loved it, being they're basically a mid-major. They're like the best mid-major in the country, but Baylor just outplayed them. Baylor from start to finish. Baylor played basically a perfect game of basketball, or the best game of basketball they could have possibly played.
So I was similar to you, Rob. I put the game on the middle of I was going back from the Mets and that game. And then I watched it from the middle of the first half on into the second half, and then the Gonzaga cut it to 10. 12 minutes, 57 seconds left in the game. That was a block shot into a three-pointer, made it a 14-point game. And at that point, I mentally checked out of the game, and that was the right thing. I think the world, maybe that's an exaggeration, mentally checked out on Baylor when they went into COVID protocol, came back and lost 2 games over the course of the remainder of their season. The reality is, all season long, until then, it was, wow, we really missed that great game in the beginning of the season, Gonzaga versus Baylor. These two teams are cut above everybody else. It's really not close. Michigan is a distant third, and then everybody else is even down below further than that. And that got forgotten because Baylor stumbled, but they stumbled having COVID. Then Baylor goes and crushes Arizona. Basically only played half a game of basketball and gets to relax. As you said, Rob, they didn't have the pressure of being built up of being the only undefeated team going on. They got to be the underdogs in a game when they really shouldn't have been. Meanwhile, Gonzaga was obviously mentally worn down. That UCLA came out, played a completely different game than everyone thought they were going to play on paper. You saw that Gonzaga couldn't put them away. They were up by 7 at one point, and just the game should have turned around and been over against UCLA. They couldn't do it. The mental stagnation of having that undefeated season and being the only undefeated season, I think may have been too much, just like you said. Had they lost the game in their conference tournament, I think this would have been a completely different game. I think had they played the best out of three and Gonzaga lost the first game, it could have been completely different. And a lot of people have pointed out that when you looked at the two teams, even though Gonzaga was taller, Baylor was bigger and stronger. But again, I don't know how much of that was a factor of the mental game. And am I the only person who every time Tim A touches the ball just thinks South Park? Like just nope. Absolutely every time.
And I think that's one of the things about that. You guys have already touched on most of the points that I had. You know, the UCLA game, which was a fantastic game, start to finish, and basically it ended the way I think it should have ended. It wiped out Gonzaga. It took them to the limit. The only thing I'm going to really add to this that I did find personally is I feel like Gonzaga was not used to playing from behind. You know, and you get them in a position where they have to play on their heels a little bit, then suddenly they're in a position they're not comfortable with. I mean, I think, Rob, you and I were talking about the fact that, you know, the games are over like the first half of Gonzaga. For most of the playoff run, you know, these games were over nearly immediately. You know, Creighton was an example of that. You know, they just basically took off running and the game was over really by halftime. In this case here, you get them on their heels a little bit. You take the lead, you control the game. It put them in a position that they were not comfortable in playing from behind. You know, once Gonzaga was behind by, I think, double digits, only once did they bring it down to 9 points. After that, it was just basically just Baylor just taking over at that point and just expanding the lead, controlling the clock, and frankly, just controlling the entire game. The better team won. I think like you said, if Gonzaga had lost a game prior to going into the playoffs, then yes, they probably would have won this game. It would have reset things. You got me thinking a little bit way back in the day when New England went 16-0. Had they lost that game to the Giants, which was a garbage game for them anyway, they probably would have won the Super Bowl because it would have taken the pressure off of having to go on a perfect season. But congratulations to Baylor on that. They deserve it. Little disappointing, like I said, for Gonzaga. My question in this case here is, does Jalen Suggs go pro?
I think that's a question for him. Like, it depends where he feels he's going to go. I mean, in Rutgers, well, the best player for the Rutgers women's team could have went pro last year, and she opted to stay in. You know, said she had unfinished business and wanted to give it another shot. So with the men's, it's a little different. Like, you very rarely see women come out early, but if he thinks he's going to go high, that he could be a lottery pick, then I think he comes out. But if he feels like he's got some unfinished business, he might stay.
I mean, he's already got the championship at this point. Yeah, go ahead.
I think Suggs is projected to be a top 5 pick, so I think he's coming out. I don't think that's really a question.
You know, I think that too. I think at this point, had he lost, honestly, if Gonzaga had won, Timmy, I think might have gone pro.
I'm sorry. Yeah, my fault. I'm thinking I just had that backwards. I was like, wait, I had the teams backwards. Yeah, my fault. Yeah.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Yeah.
In my head, I'm like, that doesn't like. I'm sitting here going, do I sound right? I'm like, no, wait. I'm like, yeah. He'll come out, I think, for sure, because he'll be, especially if he's a top 10 pick. Tim A or whatever. Yeah, the kid from Gonzaga might stay to settle some unfinished business.
Jared Butler also. I mean, there's a possibility there too. I mean, because if the money is available, honestly, I don't blame them if they want to do it early.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So just like I said, getting your thoughts on that. So, but again, congratulations to Baylor. The better team won. The better team controlled it all the way through. I was just hoping it was going to be a more interesting game, and not one that was pretty much over within the first quarter of the entire game. Like you guys, I was actually bouncing back and forth between that and the Mets game. Swung off the Mets game when it was bases loaded and Bryce Harper was up, figuring exactly what was going to happen. Did the Mets lost their finally their first game of the year.
Took a long time.
Yeah, but at least they went this far into the season before having lost a game. So credit where it's due there. But it's. The Mets will be okay. They'll turn it around. It's just going to take a little bit of time. Okay, so we are now about 10 minutes in at this point. Find us always on Twitter at SSW Sports Den and also on Facebook at Spangler Sports Den. This is the Sports Den, as you've gathered already. Mr. Obie Spencer, Mr. Rob Stats. I'm Scott Churchson. Continuing on, we are going to be talking a little bit, like I said, of the Masters. I have a comment in regards to a quote that was done by one of my favorite managers in Major League Baseball. Also want to talk a little bit as well, before we get into the Masters. The Yankees made a trade earlier today, grabbing second baseman Rougned Odor from Texas for a couple of prospects. I find this a fascinating trade here. I was absolutely not prepared for. I like it and I don't like it at the same time. You know, it's a left-handed bat. He's only 27. I think there's some growth there. But what does that mean in this case here for Jay Bruce, who they ended up keeping on? What they meant for Tyler Wade? You know, you have bats in the lineup that you're going to have to make a roster spot for. Give me some thoughts. Give me some ideas if you got them.
Let Obi go first on this one.
Okay.
I was surprised. It kind of, I would like to say it came out of left field, but obviously it came out of second base.
I see what you did there.
Yeah. You know, it looks like Texans is going to keep a lot of that salary, which is a surprise thing for the Yankees to do to a team, but they must have really, you know, I'm not sure what it does for the Yankees. Obviously, they're looking to shore up more infielders, have them ready.
Mm-hmm.
Can't have too many at this point in the middle, especially since now your second baseman's playing whatever they call that outfield position when the switch is on. So, you know, it's one of those things that it's one of these little moves that teams make that when it happens, you don't know what it is, and then you see 6, 7, 8, 9 games down the road. All right, here's what they're planning. Is this a move that has a second move coming to it? It's those intricate little moves that the GMs don't get noticed for that really make the difference in a good GM versus a bad GM when they pan out. So we'll see what this all means.
Yeah, I mean, this could, like I said, in this case, what it came down to it was the big question: are they going to get rid of Jay Bruce? Or are they going to get rid of Mike Tauchman? The only reason those two were still around is because of the fact that Luke Voigt started the year on the IL, so both of them had a spot. Luke Voigt will be coming back in a few weeks. Obviously, Odor is there. They made the trade for him. They're going to be playing him at second, which means that there's big questions about Bruce, Tauchman, Tyler Wade, and also Miguel Andujar. What happens there? Gio Urshela, this question. There's a ton of questions that this surprise trade opens up, and it'll be very interesting to see what ends up happening going forward and what they're going to be able to do with it. I think overall, though, it'll be a decent trade. So.
I know Yankee Nation is absolutely turned on, what's his name? Giancarlo Stanton right now. Like, that's all. Like, The trade wasn't even – I knew about the trade because of you. When you messaged us earlier, and I was joking, I go, like, how do you pronounce his name? Because I obviously misread it. No. Oh, no, Odor.
Rougned.
Rougned Odor, which I was like, rough odor? I'm like, what? I was like, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, like I said, he doesn't have any odor on the back of his jersey anymore, which is a nice thing. Yes.
Yeah, but he, like, I jumped when I got in the car on my way home. I was like, all right, let's see what they say about the trade. And all they're talking about is Giancarlo Stanton. Like, and now it's gotten to the point where, you know, last year or the last 2 years, it's like, well, he hit 6 home runs in 7 playoff games. And now it's like, well, when did he hit those home runs? What was the score? What was the situation? I'm like, yeah, you might want to get rid of it. Like, I was like, they're done. When you go down this road, there's really no coming back. And you've brought it up before. He's got this albatross of a contract, kind of like they overpaid for him. It came back in so many other ways where they didn't go after like Manny Machado. They didn't go after Bryce Harper because they had, quote, too many outfielders at the time. So, yeah, I think part of me even thinks the trade was a way to just kind of get the attention off of him, like in that whole aspect of them blowing up. But they were bringing up a lot of other – there's so much stuff going on with the Yankees this year. This is why I'm so glad I'm boycotting the Yankees right now. Like, they're just a hot mess. They're like a train wreck. But am I going to be able to look away? Because sometimes you don't want to look away from a train wreck. But,
you like to see the car. You like to see the accidents.
Yeah, it's like why do people watch NASCAR? Because they want to see the wrecks.
This reminds me a lot of the team that they had in like 05 and 06. You know, I know even 04, where it's just like, okay, we're going to grab X player, Y player. We're going to dump the farm system to get whatever name we can grab. You know, and that it reeks of almost desperation in some ways. I mean, I was on one hand, I liked the Giancarlo trade. And on the other hand, I knew that was a win now. They're going to fail afterwards because this contract is going to kill them at the end because they're going to have that one at the very end. They're going to have Garrett Cole at that point. Who knows what Aaron Judge or Gleyber Torres are going to be making at that point, but that's going to be sizable, no doubt. So you were looking at a lot of money being spent. You're going to see watch what happens to the Dodgers. What happens to the Dodgers in the next 3 to 4 to 5 years is going to happen in the Yankees in 6, 7, or 8. I just see that where these contracts are going to become very difficult. I'll even say it to a degree with the Lindor trade or the Lindor contract to some level of degree, where he's going to hit 34, 35 years old, and that's going to be a lot of money for an injured player. Mets better pray to God there's a universal DH by that point.
I think that's one of the reasons they didn't want to give him the 12 because he settled right after we went off the air last week. It was like, oh, like the next day, like, you got a deal. Like, okay.
He shut up last week.
Well, no, but it was like, I think he realized the offer that they made him was a legitimate offer. And they're like, bro, nobody's paying you till you're 40 or even 30, that late. So, yeah, maybe it's something in the water in New York right now. Like, I mean, it makes the pizza good, but it makes you make bad sports decisions. Because look at the Brooklyn Nets. Like, they're the same thing right now. Like, they're just grabbing if it's not via trade, they're signing people off of buyouts. And it's like, they're like, dude, they have the NBA 2K17, like, all-star team. But it's like, they're just grabbing guys, like, left and right. And it's like, yeah, if we were playing 4 years ago, this is the dream team that you want in the Olympics, but like a lot of these guys kind of washed out 2 years ago.
I think part of it has. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Oh, go ahead.
I mean, he's right about the Nets. At least with the Nets, those guys are on 1-year deals. With the Yankees, and the Dodgers and the Mets, I think you have to play as if you're going to be able to suck those contracts up at the end of them and bring on new young talent. And that $30 million for a mediocre DH is not going to be a lot of money in 10 years from now, and that contracts are going to escalate that you're paying the best players 50 and somebody else will take a 30 million. I just think that's how you have to operate, especially when there's no cap. If you want to be teams that win, if you want to be teams that make money, do what Houston did and just scrap everything and just put any product on the field and people will still come. I mean, especially in New York, people will complain, but they'll still come.
And that's probably part of it too. I think part of it is with New York is you have an expectation of being the head of the country, from a press standpoint. There's a level of expectation that comes from the players in New York versus, say, Kansas City, or St. Louis or some of the smaller markets that exist. You have to manipulate that. You have to control the nationwide headlines. A small team of average run-of-the-mill players will not work in an area as big as New York, as mecca as New York, even LA to a degree, but I think LA is a little bit more chill that way. So you can have a small ball team in a small ball market, but you have to have name grabbing headlines. You need to have name grabbing players in a place as big as New York. That's why that grand slam that Stanton hit last night, that put that game away. That was 471 feet supposedly. That was gone from the moment it was hit. That right there is ratings. That's the reason why they got it. Product on the field, yes. But because it's gonna hold all over YouTube and all over SportsCenter.
Yep.
So, all right. So time now. I think at this point, Obi's been wanting to talk about this for a little bit, so I'm going to let him roll with it. We got the Masters coming up, and I think that's going to tie into your show a little bit too. So, Ob, all yours, sir.
All right. So I guess we'll hit my shameless plug early in the show.
Nothing shameless about it.
On Friday at 10 p.m., I'm going to be joined by Joe Staranaka. He's the retired CEO of PGA America and the chief global strategist of Staranaka Sports. And we're going to be talking about where we are after day 2 of the Masters. But Scott's letting me talk a little bit about the Masters
Please.
Now. So I'm going to start with just the names everyone knows that people are talking about winning and kind of work down a little bit until Scott gives me a signal that that's enough, man.
Run with it.
So we'll start with Bryson DeChambeau, the linebacker who's playing golf these days. The guy's all 6'1", 245 pounds, drives the ball 320 yards. It's incredible what he does out there physically from that perspective. And is he changing the game of golf? We'll find out in due time. Last year, when it came to the Masters, he was driving balls, but he wasn't able to save himself when they went into the woods. Not everyone can redo what Bubba Watson did in 2010 for taking it out of the woods and winning a playoff, but he has also been good closer to the greens, on the greens. He is leading the PGA in total shots gained, so he's the one I think everyone is going to be looking at. He's the story in golf right now. He's what people are looking at, and he should have a fairly good chance of winning. The other guy who everyone looks at in golf right now is Rory. Unbeknownst, Rory's less than a yard and a half shorter off the tee than Chambeau. He's got some major championships. He was the young gun. He's only 12th in the world right now, though, so he has come down a little bit. He's probably getting more eyes than he deserves based on how good he is, but not based on who he is. So he's definitely someone people are going to be looking at among the favorites. American Jordan Spieth is being considered a favorite, although he's 38th in the world. He's having a great year. He finally got his first win after that epic collapse in 2016 at the Masters. Took a 8 on the par 3 12 and has never really been the same until this year. And what makes Spieth good is how well he plays around the greens. That's where he gains all his shot. Near the greens, not putting, but getting it close to that pin from outside the greens, his short game, which they say is the experts say is most important for Augusta. So that should give him an advantage, and that's why everyone's excited about Spieth, because it looks like he's back to playing the way he was playing previously, younger years, and it does have just one last week. The two non-favorites who I'm looking at are Tony Finau and Brooks Koepka. We'll talk about Koepka first. He was off to a great year, got injured, had surgery 3 weeks ago. He's coming back. In 3 weeks. That's pretty impressive. His game this year is predicated on his putting. That's a little tough. Everyone, the saying is drive for show, putt for the dough. But the analytics guys keep looking at it and going, putting is totally random. These guys all putt just as good. Just who's putting that weekend is just the act of the random roll of the dice. So with Koepka getting all of his gains right now over the field with putting, it's likely to turn back around and not work out for him. And the other guy I want to look at who's not quite a favorite is Tony Finau. He's got 5 top 10 finishes this year, which ties him for second. He's only won one tournament ever since 2016, and that was in 2016. But he's 7th overall from tee to green. So he's gaining shots. His numbers look great. He just doesn't win. And this is a guy who one single major win is going to kind of put him on the map and keep him there if that's all he ever wins, the one in 2016 in the major. And this major is as good as any for him to go out there and win. He's been playing really well this year.
So your prediction, sir. And we're holding you to it, by the way.
My prediction is, because I'm a chicken and I'm afraid to say Finau, I'm going to go with what everyone else says. And I, too, am going to go with the big bomber and watch Chambeau. And then by day 3 go, that was a mistake. He's hitting it in the woods too much.
Well, here's the interesting question on this. DeChambeau, obviously, like you said, he's got a Luke Voigt build. He's got, muscles that you only ever saw usually in former athletes on the course, not professional athletes in PGA. If he does well in the Masters, are you going to start to see a growth in, frankly, just jacked players, sort of like you did in Major League Baseball from the 80s and the 90s to now?
I think you will, because I think he's a continuation of Tiger. Right? We all heard about the crazy workouts Tiger used to do and how he used to drive the ball. Rory is not a small guy either. I mean, he's not this big, but he is huge. And he even said his game has suffered because he started trying to chase Chambeau's distance. It's a yard away. I don't know how much more chasing he needs to do. But I think already that it might come. I mean, there's other things about Chambeau's game that are different. All of his clubs are the same length. Everyone else has different length clubs so they can hit the ball at different angles as the club gets smaller. He keeps them all the same length because he's like the same swing for every shot. That's how you make sure your shot is good. Every hook should look the same. Every slice should be the same. Every backspin should be the same swing. So I don't know what changes if he continues to win on tour. He's got 2 wins this year. Other golfers are going to take. Getting to be built like him is, crazy. It's not easier to do as just say, maybe I'll use all the same clubs.
I wasn't necessarily saying the players themselves now. I'm talking like the ones 10, 15 years from now. The ones that are watching this that are still in, high school, junior high, maybe, that can still put the muscle on and are looking for, people to emulate. Rory and players like that, they're already set for the most part in their style and their approach. But I'm talking the ones that are coming up. Them, I could see them bulking up for that.
I would not only see that, but I can see.
I can say like Bryson DeChambeau is kind of, and Rory, like Scott was saying, like they kind of emulated what Tiger started, where they were younger when he was pumping iron and everything. And yeah, it is interesting to see who really sets the tone for the next generation in every sport. And Tiger definitely did set the tone for this current generation with the training and the kind of the bodybuilding and the physical attributes that have evolved in golf.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing that we might look at is, will kids who are playing other sports who realize, oh, I'm not that good at this sport, go to golf sooner, and maybe 1 or 2 of those. Oh, I was a linebacker, and I've been lifting, and now I can do this. Because one of the things before Bonds was if you're too jacked, you can't swing fast enough, right? That was what was being said, and then like, wait, he's jacked and swinging, and now everybody is jacked and swinging fast. And golf had that same lie going on. If you get too muscular, you won't be able to get ball speed. And lo and behold, it's proven to not be true because muscles make you stronger and faster. And so I think, yes, we might see more kids who are playing golf hitting the weights earlier, but you might see kids who are in sports that are more likely to be hitting the weights who go to golf sooner.
Awesome. All right. Well, it'll remain to be seen. Like I said, find Obi's show as he's, Friday night, 10 p.m. or 9 p.m. Eastern. Do we move that yet?
We haven't moved it yet. We're still at 10.
Okay, 10 p.m. Eastern here on Zingo TV, channel 249 and 250, and also Spangler Sports World as well. That name of the show is Me, My Scotch, and I, with a fantastic logo, by the way. Props to that one. Props to basically Eduardo's wife for making that. Okay, so now we got about 25-ish minutes left at this point. Find us always on Facebook at Spangler Sports Den and also on Twitter at SSW Sports Den. Obi also is on Twitch as well. Probably just want to mention that. Thank you. So, time now in this case here. Yeah, just responding to a chat that just popped up on the fly here. Yeah, that was a smooth segue if I've ever had one. Nailed it. In this case, time now for what I'm referring to as my shout out and my shut up. In this particular case, they are going to be literally the same person because on one hand, I love the man. I am a fan of his. I have been a fan of his for a long time. So it hurts me a little bit to include the shut up in his shout out, but it's Dusty Baker this week. I don't know if you guys heard this, but now at this point that basically fans are allowed in the stands, the Astros, their first 4 games, it did not go easy for them. In this particular case, they started out the season all the way over in Anaheim. And also they're going to be playing in Oakland. They got a full slate ahead of them. And honestly, the fans gave it to them the way that they wanted to last year, but it never really came about. So one of the lines that he said in this case is, how many in the stands have never done anything wrong in their life? We paid the price for it. How many people have not cheated on a test or whatever at some point in time? It's easy if you live in glass houses, but I don't think anybody lives in glass houses. I think sometimes we need to look at ourselves before we spew hate on somebody else moving forward. People made mistakes, and we paid for ours, and I wish they'd leave it alone. Now, on one hand, I give him a shout out because, again, I love Dusty Baker. I've been a fan of his. It was sad to me to some degree to see a very likable guy go to a team that honestly is universally despised. By the same token, he has to understand that this team cheated in 2017. it took away paychecks from other players who did what they were supposed to do. And as a result, this heckling and everything that's coming down their way is deserving. A year late, but absolutely deserving. You know, the one line that was in there about the fact that, you know, we paid the price. No, you didn't. The players did not pay the price. Management paid the price. Ownership paid the price, technically. But they kept that championship trophy. The players were exonerated from it. You know, the fact that basically they're talking about how, you know, you cheated on a test. Yes, I did cheat on a test. That's how I got through 10th grade chemistry. But that doesn't mean, in this case here, that it makes it right to do what you did as well. Was it right to do it? No, but it got me through it. I think in this case here, what we need to look at is he needs to embrace and accept the fact that this kind of attitude and this kind of persona is going to feed the fire and fuel them. It is going to fuel the fans to want to come down on the players harder. Now, one thing that one of the fans did, and I do not accept this, is they did throw a legitimate trash can out on the field. I don't stand for that. No. You know, I mean, there was an inflatable one that was thrown out on the field. Fine. The inflatable one, fine. But you do not throw, you know, a large plastic or a large metal object on the field like that. That can cause injury. I draw the line there. But for Dusty Baker, you got to take the punishment. You got to take the pain here. That kind of obstinance is only going to make it worse.
Yeah, he's got to understand that. Like, first of all, he wasn't part of that team.
He came in after, yeah.
Yeah, he came in after. So it's just, you know, like to go back to what I was saying about Giancarlo Stanton earlier, like they were talking about it today with like in New York, when you perform poorly or you do something bad, they boo you. And like the basically the best response you can give is I booed myself. Like I would boot myself. And it's like, just deal with it, bro. Like, you know, you got, just because the stands were empty last year and they couldn't do it last year doesn't mean that it wasn't coming this year. So, you know, it's like, it's probably, and the thing is, it's going to be worse early on because it's been bottled up for a year, like over a year. They're like, I want to get this out of my system and just let it go, man. It's like, and he's a great manager and everything. It's like, yeah, you got caught cheating. First of all, I was the person most people cheated off of in high school and college. So, like, I cheated on a couple tests myself, but yeah, it's coming. Just deal with it. Like, suck it up. Take it with a grain of salt or whatever, and just move on. Just focus on the game, and like you say, yeah, don't throw stuff on the field. I mean, like Met fans throwing batteries at John Rocker in the bullpen. Like, as bad as Rocker was, like, dude, you hit somebody with a battery, like you're gonna do serious damage. Like,
those are D cells too. Those are big.
Yeah,
ones.
they were D's. They were the big batteries.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, just let them get it out of their system. Deal with it and move on. That's all he should really do. And if they bring it up, be like, yeah, whatever, man. It is what it is.
Yeah, like I said, you're doing this, you're making it worse for yourself and for the team, and you're putting their safety in jeopardy as well.
Yeah.
So, anything, Ob?
Yeah, I got nothing for him. I mean, it's going to be a rough season, and you were brought in, Dusty, because you were likable. That's why you're here, to try to ease it. But it's going to be a rough season, and it could be a rough couple of seasons, and there's nothing you're going to do about it. Embrace being the heel, you know?
Yeah.
Call some WWE guys and ask them to embrace it and just move on with it. Be the heel.
So, all right, Rob, you said you had one of your own too?
I just have a shout out. I'm shouting out my godson, Max, who turned 7 today. He's a Met
Happy
fan.
birthday, Max.
So my aunt, his grandmother, is like super happy right now that he's a Met fan. So he's like the only other Met fan in his family. So I was like, I'm technically a Met fan because I'm boycotting the Yankees this year, so it's all good.
So basically, so it's not so much pro Mets, it's just anti the other team in New York.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right.
That's what it takes to be a Met fan.
Yeah. That's how the Mets started in '62. You lost the Giants, you lost the Dodgers. The Yankees are the only team left.
Yep.
Yeah, I used to see the T-shirt. It said, "I root for the Mets and anyone who plays against the Yankees." Basically,
those were big in like the late '80s, early '90s.
Yeah,
I remember those.
Yeah, and then there was another one that said, "I root for the Yankees and anyone who plays against the Mets." So.
It was either way, yeah. Oh, nice. I actually forgot about that. Yeah, now I'm old. All right, Obi, we good? You have one, or are we moving on?
I got no one worthy.
No one worthy. All right, cool. So moving on at this point, we've been talking about this for a little while. Major League Baseball has a ratings problem. Now, I went back before the show started. I went back and looked at the World Series and also NBA championship ratings, TV ratings from 2016 all the way through last year. Now, leaving out the 2020, because last year was COVID. NBA stopped play in the middle of the season. It was a messed up year. But in the 4 years previous, do you know how many of those seasons the NBA actually got better ratings than Major League Baseball in their respective championships?
I'm going to say zero.
Between 2016 to 2019.
I'm going to say they didn't.
I want to say it's a low number because wasn't that like the Warriors and Cavaliers trilogy? By the third, everybody's like, we're so over this. Like even though it went like a best of three, people were kind of still over it. But
3 out of 4. The only time the NBA lost in the last 4 years was 2016 when the Cubbies and the Indians were going head to head. And in those, Major League Baseball, I looked at it. Both those in 2016 went 7 games. Major League Baseball averaged 23 million. NBA averaged 20 million. In 2017, 18, and 19, they scored over 1 million plus viewers on average every single game all the way through those 3 years. The NBA is a stronger product right now. And I think about this a little bit, and I've had some conversations with you guys about it. I think part of the reason that exists is simply because of the fact that we have so many more distractions now. You look at Major League Baseball back in the 80s and the 90s, it was a very soft picnic type feel. George Carlin referred to it, as a very picnic feel to it. Now you're living in 2021. There's 128 million households in the U.S. 73 million have Netflix. 66 million households have Amazon Prime. And there are 203 million mobile gamers in the U.S. right now. Not talking game systems. That's 80% of households have a game system of some sort. But 203 million mobile gamers in the U.S. right now. That's 2/3 of the population. You have so much more to distract you from what Major League Baseball is putting out there. I don't know what the NBA finals or the NCAA finals had last night as far as ratings go, but this told me that apples to apples right now, unless Major League Baseball makes changes or has some phenomenal system in place or some phenomenal teams, they are going to lose to the NBA in the finals every single year going forward. So with that part in mind, and give me your thoughts if you got them, I did have 5 different rules that I wanted to add in a magical universe of ideas of just for the hell of it. Why not? Let's come up with some stuff to just see what we can do to make Major League Baseball, frankly, more interesting. Before I get started, did you guys have anything you wanted to say on that? Because I just ran for a while.
So I'm going to say I answered 0 because I thought it was a trick question. Like I thought you were going to surprise us and say, believe it or not, despite how low we think baseball is, the NBA isn't doing as well.
I'll send you my numbers.
I am going to sit here and tell you, over the last 20 years, have moved from give me 2 teams I don't root for in the NBA versus 2 teams I don't root for in baseball, and now I watch the NBA when I used to watch baseball. So I am one of the folks who moved. I'm going to kind of let you know when I give you my 5. We don't really know what's wrong with the game, but I'm going to tell you I focused on things that will make the game either faster or more action. Like those are the things here. I don't know, and I don't know what's wrong with the game because that Met game was a 2-0 ball game, and I remember that's what I like those low scoring nail biter games. And then they pulled the best pitcher right out of the game. Like, wait, what? This guy was pitching a gem. They said he had 100 pitchers to go. You only had 70, and you just pulled him. So
and the bullpen blew it again.
And then they blew it, and they lost. So we grew up with guys going 30 complete games and getting 20 wins. Which means they completed 10 games they lost. So
back in the day when we were growing up, it was 4 starters, not even 5. Yeah. Not even what they're talking about 6 or 7 now. I think we talked about this last week that David Cohn has been talking about. You might need 7 starters in today's game. But so, all right. Like I said, I got 5 rules here. Some are going to make sense. Some are not going to make sense. But like I said, it's my rules. Let's have some fun with it. So starting this off, a universal 7-inning game. I want to start things off in this case. If you saw last year, the amount of drama that happened in a 7-inning game changed the impact of every single at-bat, every single inning, every single pitch. Everything suddenly became more dramatic when you cut down almost a quarter of your entire baseball game in the process. Addendum to that, starters now only need 4 innings of the 7-inning game to get a winner. They don't have that this year, I don't think. It's still 5 innings. Bring that down. A universal 7-inning rule, I think, honestly, would make every single game a little bit more interesting and a little more dramatic because you don't have as many at-bats in the process.
So I hear that, and my thoughts are, if you go to a 7-inning game, you actually let your chances of starters completing games skyrockets, right? Because the whole idea is that the starter, once they get to that third time through the lineup, that's when the lineup starts to hit them, right? That's the analytics. So I like that in terms of shortening your game, speeding up your game, and giving your starter more time to be more relevant.
So, all right, what do you guys have?
Well, I like the 7-inning thing because I've covered softball a lot in college sports, and one of the reasons, like whenever I had the option, like every spring they'd be like, "What sport do you want?" I'm like, softball. And for that reason, baseball is just so slow and too long. And I'm like, the softball games, I said, we would play we play double headers in the amount of time it took to play one baseball game. Like there were nights where we'd get done early and you're like, "Oh, stop by the baseball field. Like we need your help with something." I'm like, what game are you in? They're like, we're in the 8th inning or the 7th inning of game 1. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, dude, we just finished 2 7-inning games over here. Like, yeah, I think like Obi said, that's the biggest problem is just it's how long it's so slow. Like they're trying to speed the game up. They got pitch clocks, and they were talking about this. We're like, remember Nomar with like the whole, he got a batter in there and he's got to go through the whole ritual and stepping in out of the
kicking his toes into the dirt. Yeah,
they were talking about A-Rod. They said, go back and watch footage of A-Rod and see how many times he like adjusts himself in the batter's box. They were like, you would have thought he was like the poster boy for Jokic or something. Like he's just a guy. Somebody said this. They go, you go back and watch. Like they're like, there might be like when he was in the league, like nobody adjusted themselves more than A-Rod. Like he was constantly in the field at the plate. I'm like, yeah, the game is just so long and it drags out. Like I said, the year that they outscored the NBA was the year people watched that because it was 2 teams that hadn't won in like almost 100 years. So you're like, everybody's rooting for one of them to win, so it was entertaining.
Obi, what do you got?
All right, so my first rule is a regular season rule only rule, and that is a mercy rule. Okay. So I'm not making a projection of how many points or whatever, but just develop a mercy rule so we can end some of these games earlier and just be like, all right, this is over. No more padding your stats. Time to go home. Like
Little League used to have.
Yeah.
All right. Basically, at this point, we only got about 10 or 12 minutes left, so I'm sorry, I need to speed this up a tick. In my case, you mentioned this, speeding up the game, Atlantic League pace of play rules, 12-second clock, eliminate walk-up music, and 30-second mound meetings, and only 3 mound meetings allowed per game. These are the Atlantic League rules that I looked up on the site earlier today. I would love that. Speed things up a little bit, save that kind of aspect.
I got long at-bats. So for now, let's call it 10 pitches. Results in 2 things. After 10 pitches, you get an out, giving the pitcher credit as a strikeout. You also get a walk. The guy goes to first. Can't be the third out of the inning, but if it's 0 or 1 out, the guy gets there, he gets his walk, the pitcher gets an out, and we move on to the next batter.
How do you determine which one it is?
No, it's both. So there's an out. So after 10 pitches, there's an out registered, goes up, pitcher gets a strikeout credit to him. The batter gets to walk. He's on first with 1 more out than there was before.
Huh, okay.
I feel like that would be an out, though. And like if you went by the count, it would. Oh no, because it could be a walk.
No, because it would be a bunch of foul balls.
Yeah, a bunch of foul balls, and it could be a strikeout if a credit as an out. But because it could go either way. Then for a second, I was like, wait, it would have to be an out or a walk. Yeah. If it's a full count, it becomes a walk. If it's like 2-2 or less, if there's less than 3 balls.
If it's 2-2 and you foul off 6 more pitches, you've earned your first base. You've also
that's what I'm saying. If it's nice. I got you. Yeah.
All right, Rob, did you have one of your own? Or are you good?
I'm good. I mean, the only thing I would change is like I'm one of those guys. I think part of the reason baseball's struggling too is that you still have people who want to see Pete Rose come back. Like you can get people who boycott, who refuse to watch it. They're like, I got a bunch of juice heads smashing balls 500 yards using PEDs, but a guy who bet on his team to win is banned from the league. So that's like the only thing I would like. That would be my big change in that aspect. It's not really a rule change, but
okay. But yeah, I mean, in this case, yeah, let Pete back in, especially after 2017. Number 3, regular balls and strikes. Regulate them. I do not like. I mean, I respect the human element, but get the play right. Get the automated earpiece that some of the leagues have in there, where it's automatically told to the umpire if it's a strike or if it's a ball. You see these pitches, and you see it, especially now that they have the boxes going on, where you can see if a pitch is out of the strike zone or not. And it hurts the reputation of the umpires. So that's one of my easy ones. And then from there, I'm going to go to the weirder ones.
So as you can see, Scott, I jumped to weirder earlier than you. I love the automated, and why even have the umpire call it? Just let the machine do all the work. But now I'm really getting to my weirder one. So instead of baseball being runs scored, have a point system. And I have 2 possibilities, but either way, it's a point per base. So you get out first, you get 1 point. Second, that encourages stealing. That encourages sack bunting, all sorts of things. And then I do some studying, but each base may be worth the value of the base. First is verse 1, second is verse 2, third is 3, home is 4. And I just think that will increase the action on the base pads, because getting that next base has a lot more value than it does now, because now we're going to wait on first till the guy smashes me in with a home run, but maybe not. Maybe getting to second's a better option.
So possibly, like, for example, say a hit is worth a point, a run is worth 2, a home run is worth 4, and a strikeout reduces it by 1.
Something like that, yeah. Which is funny, because I feel like this is like a cricket idea somewhere along the way. And earlier you were talking about cricket. I don't think it was on this show. We're like, well, you only get 1 out per at bat, but there's so many different things that go on with scoring versus.
Yeah, you can score up to 6 runs in a single. If it's an actual home run, if it hits, if it actually bounces into the fence, it's 4. So, fun fact.
Yeah, what if you get a point for a stolen base, which is kind of you don't see guys steal, like we talked about in the World Series. Like there aren't a lot of great base stealers anymore. You can steal that base. It's like, oh, got a point.
Yep.
All right. You know what? I hadn't thought of that. I like that. All right. So now at this point, we're going to my slightly more crazy ones. One of them, institute a power play. So if a team makes an error, they're down a fielder in the next inning. 2 or more errors, they're down 2 fielders. If they make 3 errors in an inning, I don't want to take away 3. But if they do 2 or more, you're down 2 fielders. You have to have a pitcher. You have to have a catcher. The rest is up to you. That opens up the field a lot, and also management strategies of if you're going to have more infielders, more outfielders, and things like this. It changes the dynamic, because it also allows the player or the hitter to want to be motivated to spread the ball around a lot more instead of being an automatic pull hitter.
That is my only issue with that. My only issue with that is what's the error, what's a hit. It doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen enough. Where you're like,
but I mean, what's designated an actual fielding or throwing error?
Yeah. Like, do those calls begin to matter a lot more? And that's something. So, other than that, I think that's an interesting idea. I might say we would start with 10 fielders instead, so the score is automatically brought down lower. But so the first one's a power play, but we're at what we're used to seeing, and then I'd let you get 3 errors in an inning too.
Well, I mean, I was actually referring to like for the next half inning, but I get
you.
But not the rest of the game. Okay.
If you start with 10, and then you can have that many people coming out.
So, all right, Ob.
So my next one is, I thought this might make the game faster, especially if we included my previous one about the long at bats. But instead of 9 innings of 3 outs, 3 outs of 9 innings. Sorry, 3 innings of 9 outs. So it's just
that's
less time to go to commercial.
That is almost cricket rules right there, because you have 10 outs per side and then you're done.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
I think the one I just thought of too, it's not so much a rule change, but I think it would make the game interesting, and it has made the game interesting in the past when we've kind of gotten away from it. Like you don't see it, like you see it in stadiums. They have their own specialties, but you don't think of like the most popular ballparks, Camden Yards, Fenway Park, Tropicana, the field in Houston. They've all got this unique layout. Like they've got the green monster, the wall in right field in Camden Yards. Like Houston had that wild hill in center field when they first opened up. And people were saying, like, you have these when you have a unique stadium, like a unique field of play. Wrigley Field with the ivory. How many times do you remember growing up, like the ball got lost in the ivory and it was like a ground rule double, and like things like that where I'm like, yeah, I want to watch this game because like I'll watch Red Sox games because it's entertaining because you can hit a rocket off the wall and still get thrown out because it'll bounce back so hard. You're like, oh, I got a double, and you're like, you're turning first base and the second baseman standing there with the ball like, gotcha, and you're like, what happened? You're like, oh, I hit the ball and it came right back. Like, I think having more fields and stadiums that are unique and have like something that's like a true home field advantage. Because you look at even other arenas, everything's like cookie cutter now. Like there's no ambiance to it. I remember going to like the Nassau Coliseum to film 2 years ago, and I was like, God, this place must have been insane when like they played the Stanley Cup here because it just had that little bandbox feel to it. I'm like, oh my God, if it got loud in here, like you couldn't hear the person next to you, like if you were on the rink. And like that's what I think a lot of sports miss in general, especially baseball. It's just like old Yankee Stadium had such a different environment compared to the new Yankee Stadium.
Oh yeah, well the new one's more like a golf clap going on.
Yeah,
So we got about 3 minutes left. Obi, I'm not sure about you. Let me ask you your thoughts on this. I can carry mine into next week and becoming a brand new topic.
Mine rolls perfectly from what Rob just said. So let me do mine and you do yours next week.
Okay. I mean, because like I said, we can turn it into my next one into a brand new topic of its own. I'll tell you what it is off air.
Yeah, no. So my last one also was about configuring the field, but it was keep it 90 feet from each base, but bring second and third in. So now the catcher has further to throw it to get the guy at second, increasing your likelihood of stealing second. And just increasing those stolen bases might be enough. If your field's gonna get a little narrower then, so you're gonna have a few more foul balls. That could be a problem given everything we've just talked about. But it could then again increase action on the base pads. If you make that throw 2 more feet for the catcher, will you increase stolen base success by 10-20%? And is that enough to make people start stealing bases? I think that's just a little tiny difference that could really increase at least action on the field. If not, it might not speed the game up though.
Okay. Like I said, we got 2 minutes left. I'm seeing, the messages popping up in the chat right now telling me how much I got left there. In this case here, I'm going to call it a straight up teaser. What I have can work as its own topic, full out. It could honestly be a full show itself. So I'll tell you guys off air what I had in mind in that. But this is going to have to do it for us right now. Any other thoughts, gentlemen, before we wrap up?
No, I'm good today.
Awesome.
Good.
Fantastic. So, like I said, this is the Sports Den. This can be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network on 4 different continents, 35 countries around the world, 35 platforms as well. We are actually always available on Twitter at SSW Sports Den and also on Facebook at Spanglish Sports Den. For myself, I'm Scott Churchson, Mr. Obi Spencer, Mr. Rob Stats. Check out Obi's show later on Friday night because he's going to have one of the former heads of the PGA. Check out my show tonight, Tales from the Film Set. Rob, you're always welcome as normal, where we're going to be highlighting the 10-year anniversary of the filming of Men in Black 3 and the scene that I remember shooting and being part of that sadly never made the cut because it involved an alien invasion. And I remember that one really well because some lady almost got trampled. So that's it for us. Thank you as always for tuning in. I appreciate it. You guys rock. I'm Scott Churchson. Have a great night. Make it a great tomorrow. Be good.